Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Happy SEL Day. Welcome to our SEL Day webinar, Parents Equip Our Kids. I'm excited that we have a great lineup of parents who are social emotional learning experts, sharing what helps their kids and other kids thrive. It's a precarious time for all of us, as I'm sure you know, and especially for children and youth today. So today's topics are very timely. I'm Matthew Spohr. I'm the Director of Marketing for the nonprofit Equip Our Kids. We promote emotional intelligence and other crucial life skills called social emotional learning in schools and homes. Viewers on Zoom can submit questions in the chat box. I know we're having some technical difficulties on Zoom at the moment. We also have viewers on Facebook and YouTube, so welcome to you. Everyone, please feel free to live post your thoughts and reactions to this session on your favorite social media platform and use the hashtag SELDay. Recordings of this session will be available after the conclusion of today's program. You can help get SEL into more schools by texting the word EQuip to 707070 and making a donation. And we'd especially like to thank our webinar sponsors, plus the National SEL Day sponsors for making today possible. So without further ado, we're going to move into our first session of the day, which is called Meet the Millers. Our moderator is Michael Wilson, a dad and the outreach coordinator for the Harris County Department of Education in Houston. He'll be interviewing mom and author Jennifer Miller and her husband, Jason Miller. So Michael, start us off.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Wilson with the Harris County Department of Education in Houston, Texas, and welcome to this session of Meet the Millers. It is my pleasure to facilitate this session with Jennifer and Jason Miller. I've had the pleasure to work with Jennifer for a couple of years now and with Jason during the last year. First, I want to welcome both of you to this session and thank you for presenting today. So let's get this session started. Jennifer and Jason, very briefly, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the things that you're currently doing.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much, Equip Our Kids, and Mike for hosting us. I'm Jennifer Miller. I am founder and author of Confident Parents, Confident Kids, with the mission of helping prepare adults, whether they be teachers or parents, with the understanding of how they can support children's social and emotional development. So I'm excited for our conversation today.
And I will add my background a little bit. Thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone for hosting us, and just thrilled to be here with Jen in this forum to share just a little bit about how we bring emotional intelligence into our parenting. And by way of my connection into this world, I actually do this work as well. I have my own practice in coaching leaders called Inner Sound Coaching and Consulting. I have a background in organizational and leadership development, and emotional intelligence is a key part of how I coach leaders in business and nonprofit and community settings. And thrilled to be here to share the lens of the parent, the working parent in particular.
Okay, our first question. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your family makeup and why is knowledge of social emotional learning important for family members?
Well, we have a small family. We have one child, 14-year-old. So we're now parenting a teenager. And I was doing social and emotional learning work in schools. And when we became parents, Jason and I sat down and said, we want to become intentional. We want to become very purposeful about how we raise our child. And as we stepped into the toddler years, I realized how complicated that would be. And so I began studying it, and I really changed over my work to focus on parenting with social and emotional learning to learn myself. And Jason and I have really had rich conversations and also opportunities to practice at each age and stage over the years. How do we build self-awareness in our child? And by the way, how do we do it in ourselves? or self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. It's been quite a learning journey for us, and we're still on that path.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit there, Jen and I both have a shared philosophy that one of the primary purposes of family life is to cultivate the well-being of all of its members and all of the people that we touch in our lives. And with that kind of focus in our family life, we know from not only the work that we do with others, but also in our own anecdotal evidence and in learning ourselves, that it all starts at home. It all starts at home. And so social and emotional intelligence is a critical part of well-being. It's just as important, if not more important, than physical health in many respects, and often doesn't get the same
I
kind of
got the
treatment.
page updated. There's now a Zoom link at the top. It looks different than the original one, but it says Event Live, join here.
Jason, in the past, the father or male role in the household did not include expressing yourself regarding your feelings or being sensitive to the emotional needs of others. However, things have changed and fathers are required to make a shift in the past. How do you model for your son the importance of practicing SEL skills?
I really appreciate this question, Mike, and get an opportunity to talk about the authentic experience. I can speak from the lens of growing up in a male culture that often doesn't allow for all emotions to be present, right? There's certain emotions to be present. And even, you know, in my background working in the business world, I don't know how many times I heard the word touchy-feely when we talk about this stuff, right? But we know, and I know from personal experience, and from the research as well, that it starts with modeling. You know, the power of parenting is really in not always what we say, but really what we do. How many of us had a parent that told us, don't do as I say, don't do as I do as I say? Well, it's the modeling that really matters. And so I really took it upon myself when I had my son Ethan. I was very serious about being the model of the male for my boy that we wanted to cultivate in the world, which is a focus on well-being and compassion and care in the world. And so I often model this at home by bringing my own vulnerability, which is often counter to even my own upbringing, and it's not always comfortable. But if we talk about self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship management, ethical decision-making, we have to model it ourselves. And so if I'm having a tough day emotionally and I might lash out at my son because I'm frustrated or I'm stressed, then I will own that. And I'll say, you know, I was irritated because I had a really intense day at work, and I'm owning that I was irritated and I expressed myself poorly. And I want you to know that that's mine and that's not yours. And that I will own my part, and that you don't have to take that on, right? So that's in a small example of how I might model poor behavior, poor choices, which, you know, welcome to the human race. We're all in this in some way.
Well, I have to concur with what you said. My daughters noticed early on whenever we were watching Disney movies, if Mufasa died, I'm crying. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
always saw my emotions. I definitely wear it on the sleeve. For either of you, do the school your son attends implement SEL concepts and instruction? And if so, have you noticed any change in your son's attitude? If not, what can parents do to partner with their schools to promote the benefits of SEL for students?
Mike, that is such an important question. And actually we have had the contrast of him attending a K-6 school that did not emphasize social and emotional learning. And then now in middle school, he is in a school that prioritizes social and emotional learning. And there is a vast contrast in his whole experience of learning for us as parents, and in his reflections about his experience. We found that in the school without it, there was an emphasis on competition, there was exclusion, and a lack of inclusion, and there was a lack of acceptance of anyone who didn't fit the mold of whatever that perfect mold of a student should be. In his environment where they value and talk about social emotional learning, they intentionally teach social and emotional skills. In this environment, it is not only diverse, it is truly inclusive. There is obvious kindness. Students show leadership by virtue of the fact that they're learning social and emotional skills as a regular part of the curriculum. And we find that he is more engaged, more motivated. He's developing deeper friendships. So in every way, his learning is more supported in this enriched social and emotional learning environment. We can really see a significant difference.
Yeah, just his confidence level. He's not even been in this new school even a year, and he is the most confident I've ever seen him. And at a time when 14 years old is not a confident time. And so that's how we know that the school part of this is a critical piece. And it's just a small thing of even being able to talk about feelings, right? Anytime any kind of an emotion or feeling came up in the previous school, it was asked to shove down. It wasn't put on the table for exploration. Self-awareness was not something that was actually even cultivated around what that emotion was about and how it leads the individual to choose to behave in a certain way. But in this new school, emotions are welcome and encouraged, and the whole range of emotions, by the way, which is really hard, right? Because there's certain emotions that are acceptable and certain ones that are kind of not. But when you can put it on the table and explore it, there's a vulnerability and a safety in that environment that encourages self-awareness, and that breeds confidence. And we've seen that with Ethan.
Yeah.
There are so many sensitive issues that are occurring today, which can cause much anxiety in the household. How can families use SEL techniques to help their children handle these issues?
Well, I think it's critical to talk about issues, and sometimes schools shy away from what's happening nationally and globally so that they don't stir controversy. And so I encourage schools to talk about it, but as parents, we need to have it on our regular agenda that we discuss sensitive issues like racial justice, like global injustice, and in a way where we're making it personal. How can we empathize with individuals who are going through injustice? How can we look at others who are taking action, compassionate action, to make things better? So, and how can we also talk about the consequences of actions? So they did this. What do you think will happen in our world because of these decisions that were made? So the talking about it takes some of the heat away as we begin to educate ourselves, as we begin to learn more, as we begin to understand. But there's also just a layer of anxiety with all that is going on in the world right now. So preparing your children with coping strategies is also really important. And we do them as a family. We take deep breaths. We center ourselves in our body. We use mindfulness practices as a family so that our son is ready to use them at school anytime he needs them.
Yeah. So Jen's, you're talking about the anxiety, and Mike, I appreciate the question of the context, and it is an unprecedented context we're in right now with very anxious times. And it's really easy, as you know, the old story goes, as you don't know the old frog in the pot syndrome, right? You know, you put a frog in a pot of water and you start to turn it up 1 degree at a time. They don't know that the water's starting to boil. So using that metaphor, we don't even notice how persistent and insidious anxiety is in our culture. And particularly in the recent couple of years, it has really gone through the roof for everybody. And so it sounds so simple, but just noticing, just being aware of anxiety and how it is so pervasive and living with that every day is a huge thing to call out, because often we don't even know a difference. Oh, you mean there could be another way? Oh, I just assumed that being anxious was a part of life, right? So that's how social and emotional skills, being able to inquire, get curious, ask questions, and ask to tune inward is so important to bring into every environment, including the family environment. I also want to add, it may sound like, you know, this is easy for us at home because Jen and I both study this and do this with clients. You know, I mean, to say our 14-year-old is always open to self-exploration, he's a 14-year-old. So it is not easy because sometimes we ask these questions and it's like, oh, mom, dad, it's your work stuff. I don't want to talk about this, right? So that's where you got to realize there's a realistic element to this of readiness and openness sometimes, and it's not an academic topic at home. And then you just got to be aware of your role as a parent and how you need to show up different and that's why school partnership is so important, because people outside the home need to be able to bring this from the outside too.
Okay, before we close this session, we do have a few questions. And so the first question is, can you discuss the best plan to get a child help, either in school or at home, who are struggling with SEL because their routine and life continues to be disrupted by school quarantines?
Oh boy, do I empathize with that that person? What an excellent question, and it is really tough. Our children's sense of stability is based on the predictability of their days and their ability to deal with routines. I think our own anxiety as parents in switching gears is a huge factor in how we help our children manage the stress of changing gears. And if you think about it as a lifelong skill that you're building and being able to be flexible, it is an incredibly valuable skill. The trick is that the adults manage their own anxiety with the changes. I think that's the place to begin. How can I, before I even announce to my child we're shut down again, how can I take some deep breaths, get to a calm place, maybe express my own emotions with a friend or a partner, and get to a better place before I come to my child, because we all know anxiety is contagious and they will feel that and it doubles down for them. So that would be my take on that.
What SEL resources are available for parents who are just beginning to learn about SEL, and where can they find these resources?
Well, I would certainly point you to my site, which is celebrating 10 years of free content on parenting with social and emotional learning. Mike and Jason are both contributors, and there are free tools and resources galore. Check it out. Book recommendations. And also check out my book, Confident Parents, Confident Kids. It offers an age-by-stage guide from birth through the teenage years of children's social and emotional development and ways in which parents can support it. So check out those resources. And Jay, I think you had some as well.
Yep. Yeah. One that I'd like to offer that I particularly love. Jen is also very integrally interwoven with, which is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, or CASEL for short, CASEL. It's casel.org, and it is a wonderful site that is rich, full of frameworks, practices, articles, access to experts around the topic of social emotional learning. CASEL largely is the definer of the field of social emotional learning and continues to be a pioneer in researching around best practices here for a variety of contexts. And that would be the resource I would point people to. It's applicable in many different ways.
We still have a little time left. How can parents be role models and show their children the practice of using SEL skills?
I think I would respond, for me, that every time I run into a parenting challenge with my son, I try to remember that it is an opportunity to use or build a social emotional skill in myself, and an opportunity to look at ways that I can build a social and emotional skill in him. So it really changes how you look at challenges, because it becomes a teaching and learning moment each time.
I will add, we also model by how we interact with one another. I'm pointing because she's on this side of the screen to me here. I don't know if that's where she is on your screen, but that's where she is for me. And how we interact together. You know, every relationship with parents or caretakers or whoever's sharing in the load here with parenting and raising kids. Again, the modeling in our relationship sets the tone so much. So yes, we're going to disagree. We're going to sometimes not have the same philosophy with parenting, right? And how we actually model conflict resolution, how we lean into it, how we actually unpack that with our son afterwards. I just did that this week. We had a disagreement, and we had a pretty good, pretty strong disagreement one night. And he stayed out of the way. And the next morning when I took him to school, I just said, you know, I know we had a little bit of a disagreement last night, and here's what that was about, and here's how we resolved it, because you weren't there. So
one thing I have to, and I'll add to that, because my daughter and I, we've had some disagreements, and I do think because they are aware of some SEL skills, after some time has passed, we do go back and admit that our relationship is the most important thing, and we kind of apologize to each other, and then we move on. Well, Jason and Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing with us your family, your experience, how SEL works within your household. Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
Just that looking through the lens of social and emotional learning with my parenting and with our family life has changed the person that I am. I am much more aware of how my interactions involve skills and how I can really work toward my hopes and dreams for my family by focusing on my own learning and my own modeling of skills. So I think that alone can be really, really powerful in transforming family life. Jay?
I would just add that it is worth the upstream effort to change yourself, to change your family, and to change your kids, and therefore change the community that you touch. It is an upstream battle, and it is worth it because we really know this is what really changes how we connect with each other in our world.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your family experience, and we'll end this session and I'll send it back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Michael. And Jennifer and Jason, thank you so much for opening up your experience and your family to us. That was really fabulous and I think very insightful. So we do have a moment here. I do want to share some big news. I don't know if anybody else has been on email during this little session. I just got email from our colleagues at the Social Emotional Learning Alliance for California that Governor Newsom has declared today SEL Day in California, which is a big deal. And also, I know you're sitting down, but I hope you are. The President and First Lady have also acknowledged today as Social Emotional Learning Day. This is a big deal. You can certainly find more information about this on the SEL Day website, which is selday.org. I'm thrilled. I'm just like, we've been working hard for this, so this is great. So I will say, remember, you can also always find parent-friendly information about SEL on EQuipOurKids.org. Stay tuned for our next session, which is Different Families, Great Results, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.